Hey, good evening, everyone. It is Saturday evening, and to stay on track with getting our book Jump in Your Life Will Appear done in August, we needed to pop in and do a lesson tonight because there's 10 lessons, and so each day I will be doing one lesson now for 9 more days to get the Jump series done, so that you can also then hop in on the group class for the month, which is all about how to implement the jump and take action, and where you actually get to come into a group setting and some one-on-one lessons, and then you get to come into a live group setting in Zoom and be able to ask any questions that you want to about this topic and how it applies to your life. So that is the cool thing. I am camping tonight. I am taking my tent. Let's see if I can give you a little tour here. Yeah, so I bought a tent last year because I decided I was going to do some camping, and then I've never actually gotten my tent out and done any camping. So I'm in an interesting stage in my life where my kids are almost all grown up. My last one is still at home, but she's a senior this year, and this weekend she's off with her boyfriend, which leaves me with some time. It's been really cool because it's been time where, for the first time in my life, I get to decide, what does Vicki want? Because no one else is needing anything of me. And it's been a little interesting sitting with myself to figure out what that is that I want. But it's the new next layer and the next stage of growth, because as you'll learn, for those of you who are just getting out of a relationship right now and you think, wow, this is the getting out of the relationship is the destination I'm headed for. Well, I hate to tell you, that's not the destination, because there's going to be another destination. Then you're going to want to learn how to get back in a healthy dating situation. And here's the thing, when we have toxic relationships or situations in our lives, it doesn't just affect one area of our lives, it affects all areas of our life. And so we really have to up level everything together. So it's the spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, financial, and sexual pieces of our lives. So we're all working together, and we want them all to be functioning at the absolute most thriving space that we can be. And if one of them is not functioning at the absolute most thriving space to be, then you still have growth and work to do, which means that we all still have growth and work to do. So that's what we're dedicated here. That's what we're here tonight to do, is that growth and work. So the lesson number 2 is called Tell the Truth to Someone Safe. So if you'll recall, if you watched video number 1, it was all about admitting to yourself what you already know. So lesson number 2 is about telling that to someone. And by the way, if you haven't seen lesson number 1, in the little search bar on the left side of the group, or if you're on your mobile phone, it appears at the top. The little search spyglass, just search jump, and it'll pull up that video. So it's interesting to me as I pondered these lessons, because I apply these lessons at every stage that I'm at in my life. So when I did the lesson last week about admit to yourself something that you already know, what I had to admit to myself in that lesson was, I'm really ready for this stage of my life that's coming up where no one is depending on me for anything. Now, obviously, I'm always going to be a mother and always going to be involved in my kids' lives, but I'm moving to a new space where I don't have to physically be present every day to be raising my kids. It's a new space of life. And admitting to myself that I'm really, really looking forward to that felt kind of like, wow, like scary, because my kids, like, what would they say? Or they feel like I'm abandoning them, like I'm excited to move on past them. So that's just the next level for me. I can remember back in the days when Mentally, I was preparing to leave my marriage, but I had not admitted to myself that I wanted to file for divorce. And then there came a space in where I was ready to leave the town that I had lived in with my partner for so many years. I was ready to just grow beyond that. I was ready to sell the house that we had lived in together. And that was kind of like hard for me to admit to myself. And then in my job, when the job really, I loved my job, it had supported me well, but to admit that I was ready to leave it almost felt like a betrayal to what it had brought to me all those years. So that next step after admitting that is actually then telling someone that you are, whatever it is that you've decided, this thing that you wanted to admit to yourself, then is sharing that with someone. It might even be sharing it here in this group, in this space. And hello to the folks who have joined us. We're doing the jump lesson number 2 tonight. And so the key about admitting to someone what you already know and talking to someone safe about that is it gets it out of your head, and there's something about verbalizing something that releases all of the tension that you've held up to this point when this thing feels like this big, big secret. Now, it can be scary to admit to somebody what we know or what we're, thinking inside, because that is a space of vulnerability. And it means that we have to actually, share and open ourselves up. And for many of us, that has not been a safe thing to do in our lives. For me, growing up, it was not safe for me to share what I was thinking inside. And then even in my career for many years, it was, I had to tread the line of what was acceptable for me to say and what wasn't, because I was an out-of-the-box, a visionary thinker that wasn't always welcomed and accepted. So we have to overcome our fear of other people judging and criticizing us. And part of that is finding the right person to share your vulnerabilities with, because not everybody deserves to hear your innermost thoughts and to be part of what, this change that you want to create in your life. So let me give you just a couple quick tips. If you're going to share something vulnerable with someone, number one, make sure it's someone who is going to support you and encourage you to find solutions, not just do what I call stew in the pot with you. We're not looking for someone who's going to jump in and find reasons about why somebody else is so bad, or why a job is so bad, or why, whatever. We're not looking for partners in blaming and complaining. We're looking for someone who's actually going to pull us up, lift us up. And if you don't have that person in your world, then you have to go out and find that person. And often for me, that person was a counselor, a coach. And then as I developed a very stable support network around me of people who I trust completely and 100%, I now have, oh my gosh, I have 10 women that I could think of right now that I could call right now and share my deepest, darkest secret with, or if I was in trouble, and they would help me figure out what to do next. But I didn't have that in my life 10 years ago. I was very isolated. I was very cut off from anyone who could help me. But one of the first things that I had to do to create that was to be able to share where I was at. So, and here's the thing. So many of the judgments that we expect to receive from others turn out to be coming from within ourselves, because we by far are our biggest judge. So there's a couple words that you can begin to practice for yourself. And if somebody else is sharing something vulnerable, you can practice them with them. It's, I understand. Notice it's not, I'm here to try to fix this. It's, I understand. I accept you. I love you. You are safe, and it's okay. 5 simple statements to use for yourself, and then also statements to use to support others when they might be going through something tough. So here's the thing. There are 4 steps for creating vulnerability and trust that Nancy shares. And the first one is thinking about the times that you've shared something and somebody has judged or criticized you. Recognize that that person's inability to show compassion for you reflects what is going on inside of them. It does not reflect anything about you, but it reflects what is going on inside of them. So number 2, you can write from the voice of fear and judgment. And this is very, very powerful. When you learn what fear has to say to you, and instead of it being this hazy monster, you put it out into actual words, you can see whether there is some wisdom in that fear, or whether it is just, a lot of times it just seems so far-fetched. But if we don't actually put it into words, we never see that piece of it. So by giving this part of you a voice, you can see clearly how no one could live up to your inner critic's expectations. So that voice of fear and judgment is often called the inner critic. And if you take any, classes with me, one-on-one coaching, we'll do inner critic work, guaranteed. So number 3, what are you most afraid will happen if you reveal these secrets to someone? And then how likely is that fear to come true? Because here's the thing, 99.9% of all the fears that we have rattling around in our mind never come true. Never, ever, ever come true. If you go back to junior high and think about what were the fears that you had in junior high, and think about, did they come true or not? And here's the other thing. We get what we expect, and what we think about, we bring about. So those are some other things that we really have to pay attention to, because if we are solely focused on negative and all the negative things could show up in our world, then you're going to see all the negative things show up in your world. Those fears probably still are not going to manifest exactly how your brain is thinking they are, but you're going to spot all the bad things. So it's kind of like when you buy a new car. If you buy a white new Toyota car and you've never seen any other white Toyota cars on the road, and all of a sudden you see white Toyota cars everywhere, that's the same with what our thinking is. So what we're focused on is what we will see and attract into our world. So by that token, we want to focus on things that are positive versus things that are negative. And then the 4th statement here, or the 4th tip, is visualize telling your secret to someone safe. So actually just step it through in your mind, because the power of visualizing something is the first level of creation. And when you visualize it fully and thoroughly in your mind, then it's actually easier to recreate it in reality. Gymnasts, go through their routine over and over again in their mind. Pianists imagine playing their songs perfectly in their minds. And it's actually, studies have shown that practicing by use of your imagination actually improves skill just as much as the actual practicing. So your brain is super, super powerful, and we want to use it to pull you into the future instead of to keep you stuck and stewing in the present. Okay, no stewing for us here. So what's the cost of holding on to the masks versus the cost of letting go? Because when these things, these deep desires are bubbling around in our hearts, it means that our physical world is out of alignment with our inner world. And what we have to begin doing, one, is cleaning out that inner world, really getting in touch with it, which is what, this book is some of the things it's guiding us to do. And then we're bringing our physical world, by making changes, we're bringing our physical world in alignment with our inner world. That's a lifelong process. I started out like here, and I feel like today I'm getting much closer to that. Some days I feel like I'm doing really good. Some days I'm not. But it's a journey to get there. So, oh yes, Hope, you so have to get the book. So, but the cool thing is I'm going through the highlights of all the lessons here, and that wraps up lesson number 2, unit number 2. And then of course at every end we're looking at a moment to forgive. So, the moment to forgive tonight is about the people who have judged and criticized you in the past. We're just going to send a moment of forgiveness to them, understanding that they were doing the best that they could where they were at that time. And, maybe it wasn't great, but that was the best that they were doing. So we'll send some forgiving energy to them. Now, I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to be back because I want to do just a few angel card readings for those of you who did angel card readings last week with me. Hope, I think you were one of them. So if you want to stick around for an angel card reading, I'm going to end this live, and then I'm going to be back just for a little bit, and then I'm checking out of social media for the rest of the weekend. So get my reboot and rejuvenation time in for me. So hang around, and I will be back in just a little bit.